welcome to the UMass Dartmouth College of Visual and Performing Arts and the closing reception and artist talk for the exhibition of Olja Triaška Stefanović, Brotherhood and Unity. My name is Christiani. I am a student in the photography department and a gallery assistant here at UMass Dartmouth. And just another reminder, as we begin, make sure your microphone's on mute and this Zoom is being recorded. We will be monitoring the chat room during the session. We have our grad student and gallery assistant, Allison Bergman, who will be reading your questions from chat at the end of this reception. I want some hold music here.
I'd sing for you, but everyone would hang up.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe they'd be texting each other to come on to see the spectacle. Okay, 5:05, so let's give it a start. So the exhibition Brotherhood and Unity by Olja Triaška Stefanović at CVPA Campus Gallery was created specifically for UMass Dartmouth, and it explores identity, collective trauma, and the presence of the past through photographs and projections of abandoned monuments, memorial landscapes, and empty and destroyed Yugoslavian architecture. It visually analyzes the terms remembrance and forgetting in the context of the disintegration of Yugoslavia and the artist's own memories and personal history. To begin our evening, please join me in welcoming the Dean of UMass Dartmouth's College of Visual and Performing Arts, Lawrence Jenkins.
Thank you, Chris. And I am super happy to be here just to welcome you all to this talk and to thank Olja for her extraordinary exhibition. I found it more moving than I expected. Again, it is about memory. It is about collective trauma. It's about the hopes of the past and the realities of the present. And it's about in my mind, it's about the kind of bombast of the past and the reality of the present. It has so many nuances to it. It really is an extraordinarily special exhibition, and thank you, Olja, for making it happen, and thank you, Vera, for curating in the way that you always do. I'm sorry that this evening's presentation is on Zoom, the what cooperate in person, but I'm glad to have you here, and I am super excited to hear what you have to say, Olja. So I'm going to turn it over to our gallery director, Vera Levitt.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. And yeah, there's a first snow day of the season, and we got lucky to have it just tonight during the reception. But we really enjoyed having your work, Olja, in the gallery, and interact with the show and interacting with the visitors that came. So it's really rewarding, and I'm very glad that we were able to pull it off and organize this exhibition while you were in your Fulbright scholarship at the New School Parsons in New York City. So thank you for doing that and sharing your work with us. I'd like to read your resume, so to kind of frame it, to tell everyone where you are coming from, other than you coming from Bratislava, where we met originally. Just give me 1 second. And Olja Triaška Stefanović, which is something that I was teasing all our students. I said they can leave the show without being able to pronounce Olja's name, which was quite demanding, I learned. But Olja Triaška Stefanović is a photographer and visual artist born in Novi Sad, Serbia, in the former Yugoslavia. During the Yugoslav War in 1990s, she permanently settled in Slovakia. In 2007, she graduated from Department of Photography and New Media at the Academy of Fine Arts and Design in Bratislava, and in 2017 finished her doctoral studies in the Department of Intermedia at the same academy. She regularly exhibits both in Slovakia and internationally. In 2000, she was the finalist for the 333 award at the National Gallery in Prague, Czech Republic, and in 2015, she was announced as a Photographer of the Year in Slovakia. She has collaborated on many publications focusing on architecture, such as Friedrich Weinwurm, Architect, 2014 Slovart, with Henrietta Moravčíková, which was among the prize winners of the DAM Architectural Book Award in 2015 in Frankfurt, Germany, and announced as one of the 10 best books on architecture in the world. She's a 2022-23 Fulbright Scholar at the Parsons School of Design, the New School of New York City. Her work is part of the permanent collections of the Slovak National Gallery in Bratislava and Nitra Gallery in Slovakia. She lives and works in Bratislava, where she is currently an associate professor and head of the Department of Photography and New Media at the Academy of Fine Arts and Design.
Wow. Thank you, Vera. And thank you, Dean Jenkins. So next up, let's give a warm welcome to our artist, Olja Triaška Stefanović.
Thank you. You're also kind, and thank you for kind words, and Chris for a great introduction, and to Dean of your faculty for being with us. I'm so glad that that the impact of the exhibition was and present during the lasting of the show, and to Vera for inviting me and for getting in touch after so many years. So I'm so happy that I'm here, and of course to Chris and Alison that were part of the setup. I mean, that was a great time, and I'm sorry that it's a snowstorm, but I was actually waiting for the snow here in New York, to see the New York during the snow. So it came today. So it is what it is. So we will do like this in Zoom, and maybe it will be nice to have this recorded memory of all of us having the chat and having the talk. So I'm very glad that I'm in New York in my Fulbright stay, and that I can experience all of this, and that I can meet all of you and present my work. So I will talk about this current project that you can see at the gallery, and a little bit background, like why I started to do that, and how the process was developing, and how the book was made, and the exhibition. So that is the story, like a long one. But to start, I will share the screen now, and I will show you presentation, and then we can start. Okay, so I'll just do this. Okay, good. So so Brotherhood and Unity was my project that started a long time ago, I think 8 years ago, but it started when I was born, actually. And I was always in my artistic practice interested in a space, from the beginning. Either it was a private, public, unknown, or dead space, or a bounded space. And I was searching for the space, and I was searching for different metaphor in the space and the architecture. And why I was doing that? Because I changed my original space. I was born in former Yugoslavia, and in the late 90s, I moved and settled permanently to live in Slovakia. So Slovakia is my second home. And I'm very glad to say that. And I really love my second hometown, Bratislava. And it gave me a lot of possibilities, a lot of chances that I took. And also it gave me a different perspective of myself and of my growing up, and my background history, family history, and etc. And it was a long time during my studies, and later when I finished the study and studies at the academy, that I was not still prepared to work on this project, because this project is all about the politics of memory, about the forgetting, about the different waves and the levels of trauma and presence of the past. So there was a day when I realized that I started to live more and longer in Slovakia than I was lived in my home country where I was born. And I actually started to ask myself, who am I, and what is a construction of my identity? And to answer that question, actually, I needed to go back into my personal history, and to try to dig, and to try to open my identity questions, and to work on this visual story. And I think that visual storytelling nowadays within the photographic media is very powerful tool, how we can say some important things about the personal histories or some very important political, social, or cultural, anthropologic things that are inspiring us or we are working about. So from the first moment, I knew that I wanted to make the book and I wanted to make the exhibition. And so I started to travel, and I traveled for 7 years and looked for the different artifacts and different stories, smaller and bigger, that were all part of my growing up in the country that doesn't exist anymore. So the childhood memories is the first chapter that you can see now. So I'm using in my art practice, I'm using my personal photographs in combination with archive materials that I have in my childhood box. I was collecting everything when I was a kid. I mean, I was really like into this old different tickets or some parts of the concert tickets, theater, you know, I was just collecting like that. I knew that maybe in 20 years from that or 30 years, I will use them. So I opened my my childhood or children kid box, and I found so many different materials that I used, and that really helped me to go back, you know, into the years of my first 10 years of my life, and then later into the 90s when everything broke up and we had a war in the country, and this Brotherhood and Unity just divided and disappeared. And of course, it is very important to look from the political construction of the country, to look how the country was made it. So that's why the project is called Brotherhood and Unity, because it was a slogan that was the partisans after the Second World War singing and dealing as that brothers in a unity was fighting against the fascism and brought the democracy into the country, and we were a free country after the Second World War, and helped to get the freedom and democracy in other occupied countries during the Second World War. So it was a very strong slogan, you know, Brotherhood and Unity. And then, you know, how this Brotherhood and Unity was actually collapsed and disappeared and became the nightmare of Brotherhood and Unity in the Civil War, because I think that is the most traumatic experience that someone can lived through and experience. So of course, for me, it was important to look from the leftovers or some parts of the Tito's life. Josip Broz Tito was the long life president of the Yugoslavia. He formed Yugoslavia. It called Tito's Yugoslavia after the Second World War, and it lasted from 45 until 92. And so I traveled to many very significant places where I could find the traces of the Tito's like presence in the architectural urban context. And of course, also this you can see at the exhibition in the gallery, and I'm really happy how we set up and how it looks like in the combination with the video, with the movie, and with the projection, because it's really crucial part of the exhibition. And so this is different sculptures and monuments of the Tito made by the very famous sculpture artist, Yugoslavian sculpture artist after the Second World War. And it was placed in different cities across the former Yugoslavia. So I traveled to Croatia, to Slovenia, to Serbia, to Bosnia and Herzegovina in order to find this sculpture and to see how people are, you know, reacting, how the sculpture is preserved and in what shape they are. So this is the actually like a small segment, and it's called the different towns, different countries, same Tito. And of course, I traveled more and looked for, you know, different photographs or sculptures, like, for example, this one in the corner, very forgotten, you know, it was in a historical museum of Battle Sutjeska in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then I needed to get into the moment of this ending of the Brotherhood and Unity that are also part of my childhood memories. I was 12 years old, but mentally I was 22. You know, I grown up very quickly, very fast. And I think that is the most traumatic experience for my generation, because this is the story about my generation, 78, when I was born. And I think that we all grow up very quickly and very fast. We become adults, and we didn't have these beautiful teen years that we wanted to experience concerts and music and freedom. So we actually end up in the very different circumstances. So this is like a moment of the metaphor, how I see that through the photographs of the flag, that there is a star and then there is no star. I found this on the tank in the Slovenia, on the bounded some kind of the museum, a landscape around the museum. And for all these years, I was in a dialogue with my parents that are very important for me, both of them. I really get everything what I have from their intelligence and intellect. They're really beautiful people. And my father actually, for all these years, was cutting the newspapers, you know, and making some kind of his amateur archive that become really important archive of our history. And every exhibition, except in this one, I presented these newspapers or cutted articles of from his archive as a part of my exhibition, as a sculpture made out of these journalist articles. And in the book, I presented as a collage. And it's really important what he chose to have in the archive and what I found there. So it's a very important dialogue for me. And of course, then you can see different, you know, different architectural places that are destroyed, or some of the concrete buildings like New Belgrade or different suburbs around the big cities in former Yugoslavia that are, you know, in my visuality or in my memory, or really concrete, concrete moments of the childhood memories, how I see these playgrounds full of kids and everything. So that was for me important to put it in the book. And UMass and architectural Port Rudolph really inspired me when I saw the brutalist architecture that you have in your campus, and it's really fascinating. And I hope I will come again and make some photo essay about that building, because it's really beautiful. Then how to present this? I started to ask myself, like, how to present, this suffering, and not to be very, how to work very pragmatically with the emotions, and to be, to look at myself from this perspective view, to stay with that. So not to be part of the story, because I'm immigrant, so I left and I need to look at it from the other perspective. So I followed the walls around the cities as a memento of the war, of the sniper holes where I found, and I was actually very interesting how the walls are become part of the public space, and how people started to interact with them, to draw around them, to put the box offices around them. There was very interesting stories happened. So these are just 4 of them that you can also had the opportunity to see at the exhibition as a part of the setup. So this is, I think in the Eastern Europe in the 90s was very turbulent years. I think in all countries from, after the Berlin Wall was broken. And so there was a lot of, oligarchs came to the country. So this is the photo actually presenting Monument of Nothing, like the end of the 90s, and showing us how some black market or mafias took the public space, bought some piece of the public space and wanted to make something out of it, but never made it because there are many reasons. So it is really like the photo showing how this transformation of the public space in the 90s looked like, not just in the former Yugoslavia, but I think across the Eastern Europe. And of course, monuments was a very important part of me to present and to work and to put in concrete, really like that I can feel and touch this presence of the past. And that was through the memorial sites and monuments across the former Yugoslavia. So this is how it looked like, this mosaic of 36 black and white photographs on the wall, but at the gallery you can see as a projection, really huge and with great projector that you have. I was very happy with the quality of the image. So I traveled around these sites and really found, that opened so many questions in me, like how we are dealing with the history and how we are forgetting about our past, but still, and are, and we have, again, making the same mistakes because we are not, taking care about these monuments that are actually showing, and they are they are made it for all the victims, that were killed in order to fight for the democracy. It was not just that was interesting me, but also the shapes and size of the monuments. They were really fantastic and different kind of the sculpture and in the public space. And I think they are very unique, that were made it in the former Yugoslavia. And also the American public could visit and see the great exhibition that was in MoMA a few years ago, presenting the architectural legacy and heritage from the former Yugoslavia and the monuments. It's called Concrete Utopia, and it was in MoMA. So the curators of the show, they brought much more closer to this here to the public about this great legacy that we have, as you can see. So this is all work by the great and my favorite architect, Bogdan Bogdanović. He was really special and unique, I think, in the world context of the memorial sites and making the memorials, not just because of how he was thinking about the monuments, but also about his political background. He needed to emigrate in the 90s, and he died in Vienna, and he was pronounced as a betrayal of the country, of the Serbia. So his life was very tragic in the 90s, and he wrote several very important books about the cities, about the urbanism, philosophy of the city. So he was really special intellect in the context of the former Yugoslavia. And to work more about this trauma, I started about the trauma and the presence of the past and the childhood memories. I needed to work and to put in visual essay also the two terms that are very important when I was digging up about my archive. It was remembering and forgetting. And paradoxically, those two terms are very on the other side, but we need them both together, and they are standing next to each other, because in order to remember, we need to forget. So it's really interesting how our different authors from sociology or anthropology or psychology was writing about these two terms, about the importance of forgetting and remembers in the context of the political context of the Eastern Europe, for example, after the Berlin Wall, and how some things were forget. I was dealing with those two terms, how we forget and abounded the memories from the 90s that I also did when I moved to the Slovakia. I didn't want to deal with that. But then going back, I found these buildings that were destroyed and left like that in the different cities around former Yugoslavia. This is, for example, in Mostar shopping mall, very unique architecture with on concrete. They were putting on the facade of the building like hieroglyphs, ethnographic hieroglyphs, mean, it was really something special. Or, for example, political school where the young future leaders were studying. Now it's also abounded. Or, for example, these leftovers of the Sarajevo Winter Olympic Games, also presented at the exhibition as a short video where I combined the sound of the official opening of the Olympics, and you can see this, you know, great atmosphere that was happening there. Whole world was there in Sarajevo, and now that was, you know, the strongest memory of this place. It was as a battleship, and very, very, very traumatic memories are connected with this site. Also, how to present these preserved memories. I went to the atomic shelter that was built in late 60s, started to build, and I wanted to go there and to look for the untouched things from the former Yugoslavia, and I found it. I found it there. So there is a visual essay or part of the book that is also presented from that site. Yeah. So this is actually the end of my presentation, and you can see here how the book look like. Also, I'm very glad that on the exhibition visitors could have a possibility to sit in the, you know, calm, relaxed atmosphere and go through the book. I was working 7 years of this book, and I'm very happy that I work with the graphic designer Juraj Blaško from my colleague and my very good friend from the Slovakia. And it was made during the first wave and lockdown of pandemic. And I was really focused on working on this book, and a publisher is my Academy of Fine Arts and Design. And we get all this freedom, how we wanted to make the book and how we wanted to make the graphic design. So it was very important process for me to make the photo story and to make this visual dramaturgy how I wanted. It was a long process I was doing on this whole summer. And I'm very glad that also essays are part of the publication of very important people for me from former Czechoslovakia, because I wanted to bring into the story Czechoslovakia as my second country where I live, second home country, and also to see from their perspective how they look like of the breakup of the Yugoslavia and the Brotherhood and Unity. As we know, there was also Czechoslovakia divided in the same time, but had a very different story. So I'm very glad to have those essays into the book. So that is all for me. From my side, I will stop share so that I can see you.
Thank you so much, Olja, for that extraordinary presentation, those beautiful images. Again, I'd like to remind everyone that the chat feature is available for your questions and comments. For those who might be new to Zoom, the chat icon can be found at the bottom of your screen. And I would like to remind everyone that this video and chat are both being recorded. At this point, we're going to open up some questions. So we'll start with Vieira.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Olja, for the presentation. I just wanted to start with sharing a few images that actually Chris took from the exhibition, just give us some visual for the show and what you were talking about, and see how it manifests itself in the space. I was thinking, for somebody who was born in that region, it was always very important, what language do you speak? Because we all look pretty much the same in there. And I was wondering, how did your perception of your identity changed after your residency stay in New York City? How do you perceive it now?
Well, for last years, from when I started to think about identity, I realized that identity is fluid in ourselves, that we are actually, if we are lucky enough to have the different confrontations from the different nations and countries, then our identity can grow and can change in a better way. And we can get these benefits from other people. For example, this unique experience that I have for the last 5 months, and I still have 1 month in front of me. It just helped me, to identify myself more, to learn to express more about my projects in a different language. And I speak every day 3 languages. I use every day now for last, so the language, it's a part of me. And sometimes I also think how I'm different when I speak Serbo-Croat or Serbian or Slovak and in English. But I think that is so beautiful, and I hope that I will explore more and that I will get more, inputs from the different countries. That's how we can, help maybe or improve ourselves in the situations or in the home countries when we have experience from the different people.
Yeah, it's fascinating to learn that you're a kind of different person, in different language environment. It's always interesting to see how that changes, and also how I'm wondering how your art changes as well, being away from your core focus. But like, before we get to what you are doing and actually what kind of work you do here, would you mind tell us, you mentioned that you ended up projecting these images since the ones that you had framed, never arrived from Slovakia. So how did the fact that the images were now, like huge in compared with intended size change how you perceive them?
Well, I think that I presented this exhibition in the different galleries and the setup, and it's really, the exhibition and works are open for the different possibilities of presenting them. So in Tel Aviv was very much different in Israel when I presented, and in Ljubljana and in your place. And I think that here the attention or the focus, it's also constructed by the architectural space of the gallery and from the psychological aspect of the entering into the gallery. So I think that we made it good that we get the attraction of the visitors with this huge projection. And I think that they deserve, and maybe for the audience, for the visitors from your school, your campus, they are much, something that they will attract and will start to think and maybe start to make research and to read about these places. And maybe it will stay in their minds. And if they will happen to be in the Europe and they will see something like that, they will know and they will connect. So I think that it works every time. It works differently in the exhibition. There was just one thing that was always presented at the exhibition, and that is my family curtain. That is also the portraits of my family, this one that we can see, because that is a very important part of the show.
And I wanted to show the last image that we have here. You decided to include the video of from 1962 Relay Race Youth. Can you tell us about it and why you decided to have it in the show?
Yeah, well, I said that I made for several years this project. So the first, and I presented like the small chapters from the projects during the years. So the first chapter of my research, when I presented, it was actually the exhibition Relay Race of Youth that I presented in Bratislava and in Novi Sad in Serbia. And that was like my first contact and first like open up of this project. And part of the exhibition was this movie. And I think it is very important to see this unification and this getting together the nation in the context, in order to understand the pain of how this trauma then is like a more stronger maybe, or we can feel it differently when we see this, all these people running around the country. And also, in a way, some bizarre moments of that, how naivety maybe, or how they believed and how they actually believed in their country. So I think it worked very well in this setup, and also because we put together the video, the movie, archive movie, and then the book. So you can see some segments from the exhibition. You can go through the book, watch the video, and see the first, like, the moments of the Tito collage that we made it on the wall. So yeah.
Do you I was thinking when as you were talking, I was thinking like whether the difference between, like, somebody who was born in the United States or in somebody from your region is the skepticism that we all have. Like, do you think, like, you could ever use the word brotherhood without skepticism? Like, is there such thing in unity that you can sincerely, like, say without, like, knowing what can happen politically with those, after these terms are overused and over, propaganda?
Yeah, that is a good question. I mean, I can't answer to that question anymore because I already knew how it ended up, our Brotherhood and Unity. But I can just maybe tell from my parents' perspective, from my father's perspective, that he really believed in this Brotherhood and Unity and in his country, and that he was really traumatized by the events and by these circumstances that, he was 40s. We like started to think as a family, like what we will do. So he was in the same years like I am now, experienced that, breakup, not just of the country, but about ideals and everything. So I think that I can work with the skepticism, but then it's a complicated dialogue with some of the people who experience this, really believing into the country. Of course, the political situations in the 70s and the 80s were showing that if something will not, work with the situation and with the nations and with the federations inside, then we can experience something like that, but no one would expect it that it will be in this large scale. So I think that now I can't anymore answer to that question.
And go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Vera, and thank you, Olja. I'd also like to remind people that we have the chat room open for your questions. Our gallery assistant, Allison Bergman, has been monitoring the chat. Do we have anything in the chat room, Allison?
Maybe there's a,
Not yet.
Okay, well, I actually have a question for Olja. I revisited your exhibition last week, and there's some text that really struck me as an American who hasn't ever experienced this. You wrote, "I was born in Yugoslavia and I lived there until 1992. Then the name of my country was changed to Federal Republic of Yugoslavia and I lived there until 2003. Then the name of my country was changed to State Union of Serbia and Montenegro and I lived there until 2006. Then the name of my country was changed to Serbia and this is what it's called now." So I was really racking my brain to think of like some kind of parallel that I could empathize with, like that happened to me as a child. And like the closest I could come up with was when I was a kid, our telephone area code in central Massachusetts changed from 617 to 508. And there was this uproar where people were so identified with their area code of all things. And so I'm just trying to imagine like what it was like for you, as I think the first change came when you were 14. So I'm just wondering, like, how did that affect you, just to have your country name changing over and over again and to have sort of the bedrock of your life shifting like that?
Well, it affected me a lot, and writing the text, actually, I realized everything, what happened, because I didn't move until 97, and I already changed like 3 times the country 3 times the identification card, health insurance card, addresses, everything. We were changing all the time, and people in the services, we could see these bizarre situations happening, sometimes really funny and like full of black humor, because they didn't know like what they are, publishing, what kind of the identity cards with what names. I had a passport with one name of the country and with my ID in another name of the country. So it was really like mess up, and they were always changing, and we becoming more less like smaller and smaller and smaller and more is isolated. And I think that in this small text, actually I wrote that text. I remember very well when I wrote that, because I was going through this my childhood box that I was mentioning you, with all different archive materials that I was collecting, and then I found all my passports, also because I had them, and some of my childhood, like elementary school of like small books from the school with the grades and all of that. And I wrote that, and then I realized that I have a project when I wrote that, and when I confront, and when I very realistically, very clear made it the statement about, and that is the beginning of the book, and it tells us everything, I think.
Wow, definitely a reason to come to the actual physical exhibition and take a look at the book. So I'd like to just open the opportunity to anyone here in the Zoom to turn your microphone on and ask Olja a question if you'd like.
I have a quick question. I'm older than you are, and I spent some of my early childhood behind what we call the Iron Curtain in Warsaw. And, a lot of how I see Europe was formed by that experience. And for me, the dissolution of Yugoslavia was the failure of an experiment, and maybe it was the failure of a benevolent dictator who, after he was gone, the country balkanized again. But I wonder today if you have any idea what people born after the Republic of Serbia became the country's name, and they see these, decaying monuments of the past, whether they see Yugoslavia do they see Yugoslavia at all? Is it irrelevant to them? Is the notion of a unified Balkan Peninsula a possibility? Is it not desired? I mean, what's the legacy of Yugoslavia for the generation after you?
Yeah, well, it is. I think that the youngest generation, I don't have so much. I think that they don't know a lot about Yugoslavia. They were born in a different context, and they don't know. In the schools, there are not so many studies about former Yugoslavia. The older generations are very nostalgic because they think that they lived better, because then they lived worse. So there is happening this very present nostalgia about the project of Yugoslavia. And I agree that the experiment couldn't survive. And I just read that few weeks ago, I read a podcast that actually, and I read the article that this sociologist was mentioning how Yugoslavia was actually the experiment that couldn't last. And I think that this is true because there were a lot of pressure, and they couldn't make the solution how the federation would look like after the 90s, and especially to live in this balloon of leader who is dead and making the salutation to him, to the president who is dead for 10 years. It was also a bizarre situation. So I think that that's why these projects are very important, not just from my side, but from other contemporary artists that went away from the former Yugoslavia, lived abroad and work, and also from the artists from that geographical place, because as I said, the visual storytelling is a powerful tool now, and we can show the history and really open the dialogue about this unhealthy nationalism that is still present there, and especially projected by the government, for example, in Serbia, that I not agree with them, not in every, like in not even in 1%, nothing I don't have with them in common. And unfortunately, they are in the power. And I think that we need to talk much more open, because we are not living there. And I think that the dictatorship, what is now happening there, is much more worse than that was in 90s, unfortunately. So so I think that artistic project and different projects, and also talking about this with you, it is very much important.
So does your work document a failure, or do you see it differently?
I documented, I'm talking about from my perspective, from my personal experience, but putting in together how it was collapse of everything, about our dreams, about our expectations, about our identity, because my identity doesn't exist anymore, because my parents were identified themselves as a Yugoslavians, and from 91 we didn't have this anymore possibility to put us as Yugoslavians also about this. And but now what I'm working here, actually it's much more working of the beginning of that like experiment of Yugoslavia bringing nations, and it is about the non-aligned and non-alignment movement within the Iron Curtain, and how we were actually, I'm much more curious how this legacy of mind of Yugoslavians were built up with this metaphor of from my parent generation, that they were living in the East geographically, but in mind they were politically in the West, but geopolitically we were part of the non-aligned, and one of the founders of the non-aligned movement in the early 60s. So I'm very interested from this perspective how this, so I'm going much more further now back to the history on my new project and my new book.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olja, and thank you, Dean Jenkins. Do we have any more questions from the people in our Zoom?
I will try and throw out a question. It might take me a second to get around to the actual core of the question, but I was just thinking about how you said to remember we have to forget, and how beautiful that is. And when I look at your work, I see a lot of, I think about utopian visions and how much aspiration there was for this beautiful way of being. And then you come to New Bedford and you see our campus, which is also an aspirational campus. And the day that we put up your work, I was walking in New Bedford, and I'm new to New Bedford, and I was walking past the Friends meeting house, which is, I don't know if you know about Quakers, but they're very peaceful. And there are bullet holes in the windows of the Friends Quaker house. And I was thinking about how people, like, there's the reality and then there's the projections of what it is. And that's what your work makes me think about. And I think about you observing it all and how soft and sweet it is, with the red flowers going through it and the drawings on the bullet holes. And my question that I'm trying to get at here is, it has something to do with remembering and forgetting, and utopia, and like versus reality. And I don't know what that question is, but I'm just thinking about how it kind of relates back to what Vera was saying about asking you about what it's like to be in the United States, and how your work is kind of related to, or how you might see it differently being here, because America also has all these things that it projects out to the world, right? And so, okay, I'm going to end there, but these are the things you're making me think about. Yeah. So I'm not sure if it's a clear question though. So
well, I'm really glad, Alison, that when you look at my work, that you started to maybe look at some things differently in your surroundings. That is the impact that I was telling about, and that is the things how we can shape and a little bit change the mind of looking into the things, and how we can work with our own experience in the historical context, or our urban context where we live, and how this artistic process, it's important for us. So I'm really glad, and that this exhibition that is really far away from your geographical place in the our planet Earth, it still can transformed and bring you maybe some your own memories, and so yeah, I mean, it's not a clear question, but I like maybe that how you put it together, that you started to look at the things differently. So I'm really glad for that.
Beautiful. Thank you for that question, Allison, and for your observations. And I'm just going to give a last call for any more questions from our Zoom participants.
There are a couple of questions in the chat. Did you want to read them, Allison?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Victoria would like to know where she could buy your book. And Elena just said that thank you for the presentation and that you have a common past with her. So those are the current comments.
Okay, so yeah, the book, it is, I can, you can buy the book directly from me, and I can send that book on 11th of March, because I will get some shipment with my books also. I had a talk and a lecture in San Francisco in Photo Alliance that was really great. So also I will ship some books to San Francisco. So just please send me the email. Vera has my email, and I will give you all the details.
This is a great opportunity, Olja, to tell us where we can find you in social media.
Yeah, well, I'm very active on Instagram, so you can find me on Instagram, where I share also a lot of the stories that I experiencing here, and so on Instagram I'm the most active.
And what's your handle on Instagram?
It's just my name, Olja Triaška Stefanović.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
And of course, you can find our presence on social media. It's at UMass Dartmouth Galleries, and or is it UMass D Galleries, Vera?
UMass Dartmouth.
Okay, UMass Dartmouth Galleries on both Instagram and Facebook. You can also find some photos of Olja's exhibition on our social media. I'd like to say thank you so much to Olja for sharing your extraordinary work with us, and congratulations on an excellent exhibition. We'd also like to thank Dean Jenkins and Vieira. We'd like to thank Alison Bergman, Fulbright Slovakia, and Cult Minor. And now finally a toast. Would you like to lead us in that toast, Olja?
Oh yeah, well, okay, so yeah, so well, I never had the closing exhibition on Zoom, so this is the first time for me, and I'm very happy and glad that I experienced this with you. So all best to you, and I hope that in the future I will come again, and I will inform you if I will have some other talks or presentation here in the United States. So thank you for welcoming me, and thank you for all your comments. I'm really touched. It really means a lot to me. So cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, absolutely.
Na zdravie.
If I had known there was a toast, I would have found some Slivovitz somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. We look forward to seeing you at a future UMass Dartmouth Gallery event, and have a wonderful night.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, for hosting the evening.
Yeah, you were perfect moderator. Wow.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.